member of the committee. We're awaiting the arrival of Councillor Rick Rushton, but we're going to get going because we've already waited 10 minutes, and hopefully we'll be able to join us shortly, where we can continue to do business with just the two of us. I'm joined at the table by our city clerk, David Rushford, to my right, and our city solicitor, David Moore, to my left. I'm going to take out of order the second item, the petition of Ronald Madden and others, that request the City Council to adopt the following resolution relative to restoring constitutional governance. Mr. Madden, I'll give you a couple minutes if I can to make a presentation. If anyone else would like to hear about it, could you use the microphone, please, sir? Sure. And just give us your name and city of residence.
Ronald Madden. I'm sorry. Ronald Madden, 12 Pine Tree Drive, Worcester, Massachusetts. I first want to say to the chairman that I do not envy you with your first proposal. You'll probably be the chairman in maybe 30 or 40 years to have to go through this process. But let me say that we are calling upon you as representatives of the citizens of Worcester to oppose those portions of the NDAA, National Defense Authorization Act, that annul our civil and constitutional rights. The restoration of Americans' basic rights are non-partisan issue. Citizens from the left to the right of the spectrum have come together in outrage. The National Defense Authorization Act of 2011 is the controversial law which, among other things, allows for the indefinite military detention of U.S. citizens without charge or trial for the duration of hostilities in the War on Terror. Sections 1020 and 1021 of the 2012 National Defense Authorization Act grant the military the sweeping power to detain indefinitely anyone, Americans included, without trial or proof of crime, if they are deemed to consort with terrorists or commit belligerent acts against the United States. President Obama opposed 2012 of the National Defense Act, and for both 2012 and 2013 of the Act, insisting in a signing statement, once a law is passed, the President explains how he's going to carry it out. That's called the signing statement. In the signing statement, the President said his administration would not use the power that will allow for the indefinite detention of American citizens. He said that a U.S. citizen can never be subject to that kind of detention. Congress disagreed with him, and because it was part of a larger legislation, he signed the bill. But a signing statement could be changed tomorrow. And who knows who will be the next president of the United States, who may decide to detain American citizens without trial or charges because the law is on the books and the president interpreted his way. I gave you also a letter from Congressman McGovern, who has spoken on this issue. Let me say that as an elected leader, that when you see something that you believe is unconstitutional, that you should have an obligation to speak out against that. From the Congressman's letter, I'll be very brief and just get to the relevant parts. He went on to say, I commend the town of Oxford for its recent action in support of repealing Section 2021 and 2022 of the fiscal year 2012 National Defense Authorization Act. House Resolution 1540 was signed into law on December 31st, 2011, and contains a number of controversial provisions related to the United States policy on indefinite detention. I oppose final passage of H.R. 1540 because of serious concerns I had with the detainee provisions included in the bill. Simply stated, as enacted, it leaves too many questions and answers and creates too much uncertainty surrounding indefinite detention. Specifically, Section 2021 of H.R. 1540 does not expressly clarify whether U.S. citizens may be covered by the underlying provisions that affirm the authority of the U.S. Armed Forces to detain a person who planned, authorized, committed, or aided the terrorist attacks that occurred on September 11, 2011, or 2, was part of a substantial supposed Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associate forces, whatever that means, that are engaged in hostilities against the United States or its coalition partners. Section 1022 requires military custody for certain Al-Qaeda members and associated forces, including some citizen suspects. And now to conclude. Last year, in the 2012 Congress, I sponsored, and I consider Representative McGovern to be one of the greatest congressmen who's ever sat in the U.S. House of Representatives, and I've known him even before his first election, and even when he lost the first time. Last year, in the 112th Congress, I co-sponsored several pieces of legislation to correct these problematic provisions. Unequivocally state that the government cannot indefinitely detain U.S. citizens or lawful U.S. residents without charge, and clarity that any person apprehended in the United States is guaranteed due process provided by a civilian court established under Article 3 of the U.S. Constitution. During consideration of the fiscal year 2014 National Defense Authorization Act on June 13, 2003, I supported an amendment offered by Representative Adam Smith, ranking member of the House Committee on Armed Services, to strike Section 1022 of the fiscal year National Defense Reauthorization Act and amend Section 1021 to eliminate indefinite military detention of any person detained under authorization for use of military force authorized in the United States for providing immediate transfer to trial, provided by Article 3, court or appropriate state court. Unfortunately, my last sentence, the amendment was defeated on a vote of 200 to 226. I'm asking you to support our congressman in his attempt to make certain we all have equal rights. No one can take these rights from us. No country, no group of terrorists. Only we can take these rights from ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moore, can you review, we had asked the Water Department basically for communication on this, and we had asked, excuse me, I didn't have the microphone on, we start all over. Mr. Moore, could you give us a little overview of this from a legal perspective, and how it sits before us, if we have any legal standing as a city council on it, and what the vote that's proposed before us is?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me explain a little bit of the procedure on this petition, and then the issue of jurisdiction. This petition was filed on October 15, 2013. There was a request to the Law Department for an opinion, and we sent that to the City Council on November 26, 2013. The report to Council from November got filed and did not get referred to Legislative Affairs. Mr. Madnick's petition did get referred, and that's what's before you tonight. So the reason we don't have this communication is it was filed by the Council and not referred. What this communication says is, and as Mr. Madnick has pointed out, there's a fairly substantial constitutional issue. In the petition, it makes reference to a lawsuit in the federal district judge who found that the National Defense Reauthorization Act provisions were unconstitutional. That decision was reversed a week later by the Second Circuit, and is now pending an application for an appeal before the United States Supreme Court. The issue does involve the actor.
Council, if I may interrupt, does the council have any jurisdiction whatsoever on this?
short answer is no. It's a federal issue. There's no, the city is not declaring anyone any enemy combatants or engaged in any of the activities involved. It's entirely a federal issue. There's a substantial debate in Congress and before the Supreme Court. It's not a city issue.
So we can give an advisory opinion, so to speak, but would be nothing more than that, and our vote as a council would have no standing.
That's correct.
I will entertain for 2 minutes each, and only 2 minutes each, because I gave Mr. Madden, for his petition, gave him a little extra time. You can give us your name and city of residence, and for 2 minutes you're welcome to speak.
My name is Susan Serpa, proud resident of Worcester since 2002. Firstly, I want to thank you for holding this meeting on this very important issue. As a grandmother, I'm very concerned about the safety of my daughters, their husbands, grandchildren, and all the loved ones, their loved ones and mine. There is hardly a greater threat to safety than extrajudicial indefinite detention. I have great pride in the rights of citizens in the U.S. and faith in due process. It makes me quite nervous, though, to hand unitary powers to just one person, especially without requirement of any evidence or formal charges. Yet the NDAA 2012 did exactly that, gave the president, current and future, the right to detain anyone indefinitely without evidence and without exemption for U.S. citizens. Until struck, these unconstitutional powers stand. Attempts to restore our rights have been attempted and failed. The Smith-Amash Amendment and the Chris Hedges suit in the Supreme Court, and that did fail. I spoke with Dan Ellsberg just about 3 weeks ago. It did fail in the Supreme Court. The 3 branches of government have failed to protect our due process rights, and it's up to us at the local level to take a stand. Albany, New York did this, the very same resolution. Also our good neighbors in Oxford, Webster, and most recently Rutland. On September 7th, 1774, Worcester took a stand against tyranny when 4,000 residents closed the British courts. It's a proud tradition in Worcester to be, and I'm very proud to be part of that. Protect, make this old grandma proud. Yeah. Thank you.
The next speaker, again for 2 minutes. Name and city of residence.
Yes, Rich O'Coin, Worcester, Massachusetts. I actually went back and watched the inauguration from January 2nd, 2012. I watched the councillors swear an oath to the Constitution of both the Commonwealth and the United States. Raised your right hands and took that oath. Now, it's very puzzling to me when you look at those documents. You can look at the Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, for example. You can look at Articles 12 and 28 in the Massachusetts Constitution, which make very clear that individuals cannot be held indefinitely. It goes back to the Magna Carta. I mean, these rights are as old as the hills. So I'm wondering, and I know you don't have to answer a question that I'm posing, but if you don't, when you raised your right hand and took an oath to defend and uphold the constitutions, how do you not have the authority to uphold and defend the constitutions? I mean, that's the whole point of taking that oath. So I guess I'm very puzzled for the solicitor to sit there and say that you don't have the authority to do something that you swore that you would do. What did that oath mean, if not that you would defend the constitutions and defend these rights? Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
My name is Elwin Hoffman. I'm a landowner and taxpayer in Worcester, but actually I'm a resident of Rutland. And I'd like to explain that in Rutland, where the resolution passed at town meeting by vote of the voters unanimously, the town council had several months to study the issue, and when his opinion was asked at the town meeting by one of the voters, he said there was no problem with the town passing the resolution, and after that, the finance committee recommending it, it was voted in unanimously, and I think it can be voted in at any city council or any town in Massachusetts. And one other final thing, this really isn't a partisan issue. Mention was made of Congressman McGovern, whom I've also known for many years, and agree with about 20% of the time. And part of the 20% of the time was on the NDAA, even if it was for perhaps different ultimate reasons. So I think that it would be a very big feather in the hat of Worcester to have the city council pass this resolution and stand up for America. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who would like to be heard on the item? Hearing none, I'll close the public portion of the meeting and move on to discussion. Councilor, would you like to make any comment?
As a matter of fact, I did protest in Federal Square with Ron Manning and several other people regarding the implementation of this particular legislation. It reminds me of the King of England during the Revolutionary War when he suspended habeas corpus and arrested the so-called American rebels without a warrant, holding them without trial, denying access to bail, and basically doing away with the habeas corpus provisions. And that's what started the Revolutionary War, and was the basis of the drafting of the Constitution. This country has been unique in human history because of its adherence to the Constitution. That being said, my opposition was as a citizen. And because I've sat on this council for 20 plus years and have seen us lose our way with petitions that really weren't within our jurisdiction, I've adhered to the policy of just dealing with matters that were local, affected our budget and our legal rights and responsibilities. I certainly would have no objection to going out and holding a sign in front, because I do support the position of the congressman and the folks that spoke before us, but I'm going to vote to file this. Does that mean that sometime in the future, should I see the implementation of this have a direct impact on our citizens, or see the court system lose its way in supporting the Constitution? I may very well change my mind, but at this point in time, I'm going to vote to file.
Councilor, I agree with you, and I would move that we file the item. All those in favor of filing?
Aye.
Aye. So good. Our next item of business. Can I ask a question? No, we close the hearing now.
That's it?
Our next item of business is the proposed changes of the rules of the operating rules of the City Council.